Welcome, everyone, and thank you for being here. We are here to remember our friend and colleague, Felipe Quintana, who worked with legal aid in its various iterations for nearly 26 years. Felipe was as I knew, the staff person for the volunteer attorney program and also housing. He was at all the clinics, provided information in English and Spanish. When I started in March, he was my go-to person for pretty much everything. Him and Dina, in one of their offices at all times. At our first clinic this year, we decided to have this memorial to honor Felipe and remember what he meant to us. So thank you all for being here. Paul Heidel will now read from singer-songwriter Roseanne Cash's book, Composed.
Thanks, Tatiana. My name's Paul, and I used to work with Felipe at the volunteer attorney program as well. I have lots of thoughts that I'd like to share about Felipe later, but I'm going to stick to the script. So this is from Roseanne Cash's book, Composed. You begin to realize that everyone has a tragedy, and that if he doesn't, he will. You recognize how much is hidden behind the small courtesies and civilities of everyday existence. Deep sorrow and traces of great loss run through everyone's lives, and yet they let others step into the elevator first, wave them ahead in a line of traffic, smile and greet their children and inquire about their lives, and never let on for a second that they too have lain awake at night in longing and regret, and that they too have cried until it seemed impossible that one person could hold so many tears, that they too keep a picture of someone locked in their heart and bring it out in the quiet, solitary moments to caress and remember. Loss is the great unifier, the terrible club to which we all eventually belong.
Thank you, Paul. Now, Asia Brooks will read a poem written by Hajit Grossman and translated into English from Hebrew by Benjamin Ballant.
So my name's Asia. I also worked with Felipe with the volunteer attorney program, and this is entitled On Friendship. If a friend calls out to you late at night from beneath your window, never send him on this way. And if you sent him away and still insist on rigid rules, regain your composure after a moment and run to the window and shout his name. Come, Merhav, come back. I've got some corn cooking. Come eat something. And he'll placidly retrace his steps and gladly accept the key you tossed down from your window. We'll come upstairs to the first floor and will be impressed by the large pictures on the walls. He'll sit and wait for you to slip into a clean shirt, and you'll put on the movie in the kids' room, and your baby daughter will rush into the kitchen and come back with a red pepper for him. He'll decline the warm corn and say he's already had dinner. In the meantime, your husband will chat with him about Tai Chi and pour him a glass of cold, sweet pineapple juice. You'll return to the living room and go out to the balcony and light a cigarette and sip a cold beer. You don't yet realize that this is a sublime moment in your life, one of the most sublime you'll ever know. And I don't know if Susan knows this because she chose this poem, I believe. But Felipe always used to talk about you get home and you have a nice cold beer. And so when I read that, I was like, that's Felipe. Oh my God.
We'll now present a slideshow of pictures of Felipe set to a familiar song that speaks to the work he did for so many years. And many thanks to everyone who contributed pictures.
Smile, though your heart is aching. Smile even though it's breaking. When there are clouds in the sky, you'll get by if you smile through your light up your face with gladness and hide every trace of sadness. Although a tear may be ever so near, that's the time you must keep on trying. Smile, what's the use of crying? You'll find that life is still worthwhile if you just smile. Light up your face with gladness and hide every trace of sadness. Although a tear may be ever so near, that's the time you must keep on trying. Smile, what's the use of crying? You'll find that life is still worthwhile if you just smile. Just smile. Just smile.
To you, happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Felipe. Happy birthday to you. Yay, many more.
Many more.
So I was supposed to say this part before. So following the slideshow, we'll have some folks share some particular memories of Felipe. After the first speakers, we'll go kind of play it by ear, but let Asia take over for speakers. But first, Susan Page and her husband, Mark Palardy, will be sharing a reading. When you are now get up, and if you do want to share a story afterwards, you can, or you can also save it for the more informal part after the ceremony, which with food and food.
This is from A Free Man's Worship by Bertrand Russell. One by one, as they march, our comrades vanish from our sight, seized by the silent orders of omnipotent death. Very brief is the time in which we can help them, in which their happiness or misery is decided.
Be it ours to shed sunshine on their path,
to lighten their sorrows by the balm of sympathy, to give them the pure joy of a never-tiring affection, to strengthen failing courage, to instill faith in hours of despair.
Let us not weigh in grudging scales their merits and demerits, but let us think only of their need, of the sorrows, the difficulties, perhaps the blindnesses that make the misery of their lives. Let us remember that they are fellow sufferers in the same darkness, actors in the same tragedy as ourselves.
And so when their day is over, when their good and their evil have become eternal by the immortality of the past, be it ours to feel that where they suffered, where they failed, no deed of ours was the cause. But wherever a spark of the divine fire kindled in their hearts, we were ready with encouragement, with sympathy, with brave words in which high courage glowed.
So I'm going to start with just a few things that I remember about Felipe, and then we'll open it up to everyone to tell stories or feelings, and we'll try and keep it limited to maybe 3 or 4 minutes, but we'll definitely open it up for people to have some time to share stories about Felipe. So what I remember about Felipe is prior to me even starting with New Mexico Legal Aid, I remember before I even started, people would come up to me. They had found out that I got the job, and they'd be like, "Have you met Felipe yet?" And I said, "No, he was in my interview, but I haven't met him yet." And they would say, "Felipe is a trip." And I was like, I wonder what that means. It can mean a lot of different things. And then I met Felipe, and Felipe was a trip. Felipe was, he used to joke and say that he was gentil, but he was not afraid to say what he thought. He would definitely tell you what he thought. But he was so funny. And he loved a lot of different things, and he lived without being shy or being scared. He did what he wanted to do. He had a great life. And he did have some things that he really loved. So a few of the things that I remember is he loved telling stories. We would have staffings. I don't know if Dina and Paul knew what they were getting into when they decided to have these staff meetings. But he would tell just things about clients or whatever was going on, but it would be like, so long, and you could not interrupt him, or he would like start over. You couldn't try and speed him up by suggesting what he was gonna say next. He'd be like, "No, that's not what I mean," and then say something else, and it would be like just these long stories. But you would get the detail of like, everything that the client was wearing, or like the way that their voice sounded, or he would just tell these stories. And we had a part of our volunteer attorney program training that was, are you a print communicator or oral communicator? And he was definitely an oral communicator. He also loved rap and hip hop, which was kind of shocking to me. In seeing him, you're like, oh, you like rap and hip hop. And he would listen to like the hip hop station, and he would come in and sing these songs. And one time he was singing the song, I don't know if Paul remembers this, but he was singing the song, "I'm in Love with the Cocoa." And so cocoa is a reference to cocaine. And he did not know that. He thought, so I said, "Oh, you like that song?" And he was like, "Oh yeah, I like that song." And I said, he said, "Well, it's really weird to me that he's saying that he's in love with the Cocoa Man." And I said, "Who's the Cocoa Man?" And he said, "Well, the Cocoa Man is like this boogeyman type character in Latin American folklore. And, mothers tell their kids to beware of the Cocoa Man. So it's really interesting that he's in love with the Cocoa Man." And I was like, that's not what the song means. So I had to burst his little bubble and tell him that what the song really meant. But, he had his own idea. And I don't even know if I really convinced him if that's what the reference really was. He loved the casino. He would come back and he would tell me at length about the slot machines. And my parents loved the casino too, so I really loved when Felipe would come and he would tell me about the slot machines that he would play. And the slot machines have like little emblems on them, and like the penny machines have like thousands of emblems on them, and you have to like get them all lined up. And he would describe the emblems from the machines to me, like what they looked like China Shores has a little panda and a little bamboo shoot, and I'm like, I know more about these slot machines, and I have never even played them because Felipe would describe to me what the slot machines look like each detail. He loved his jewelry. I saw in some of those pictures, he was actually like showing people his jewelry. So like 5 of those pictures, you see him going like this, it's because he's showing people his jewelry. And his jewelry was amazing. So, and then the last thing that I remember is that he did love New Mexico Legal Aid. He loved working there. He loved the people there. He loved the clients there. He would go out of his way to help people. I remember one time he went to someone's house to try and get them to sign something because they were disabled. And so he really did love helping people. He had a very, very keen sense of justice. If there was a fight to be fought, he wanted to fight it. He was so excited when there was some sort of controversy because he was like, I'll bring my picket signs. And I'm like, I don't think it's like that sort of situation, but if you want to, he's already got the chants, like the picket chants. And I'm like, all right, okay. But he did love working for New Mexico Legal Aid, and he loved helping the little guy. And so those are just a few things that I remember about Felipe that, I think sum him up in a nutshell. So if anybody else wants to say something, we'll just, I think, take turns at the mic. So if you just want to like raise your hand and then come forward, we'll just kind of go one after another. Yes, Edna? Okay.
Hi, everybody. My name's Edna. This is my daughter, Perla. She did, in fact, meet Felipe a couple of times. But so the first time I met Felipe was when Angelica and Nia Allen hired me at Legal Aid back in, I think, 2002. And I was pretty certain just from the get-go that he did not like me. And so I'm the kind of person that generally doesn't care what people think about me, but for some reason it really bothered me that Felipe did not like me. And so I set about, I'm not sure in what way to get Felipe to like me because I don't actually remember. But there was a lot of crazy stuff going on with the union back then because actually Angelica hired me under Legal Aid Society of Albuquerque, and we merged with the rest of the statewide programs, and it was just absolutely crazy. And somehow through the union process, and I don't even remember really what it was, he liked me. And shortly thereafter, we were going through a lot of transition, and I was poached by the district attorney's office. And so I put in my resignation, and Legal Aid had a party for me at this now defunct bar. And Felipe presented me with this necklace, actually. And I'm certain that everybody who was there had pitched in to purchase this necklace, but I have treasured this necklace since then. I wear it all the time. And so when I came back to Legal Aid in 2000, whatever year it was, 17, I said, do you remember this necklace? And he did. And so then I realized that he liked me. And so that was kind of a moment for me, like he was so formidable. And if he didn't like you, you knew it. And if he liked you, you knew it. And so for me, it was kind of a highlight in my life that Felipe liked me. But it also began or continued on our love affair for good jewelry. And so he and I would always talk about jewelry. And we would talk about going down to the Palms, and he would tell me how much money he had allotted himself each paycheck to purchase jewelry and how he would rotate jewelry in and out. And that's kind of my favorite thing about him. But he loved Legal Aid. He loved fiercely. He disliked fiercely. but it was all still somehow part of the same wonderful guy. So I know I'll miss him. His office was kind of right across from mine, and in the evenings he would blast opera music mostly. So he also liked opera.
Carmen?
Hello, everybody. I'm Carmen Cortez. I work at Legal Aid. I worked with Felipe, the volunteer attorney program for the past 3-4 years or so, with Dina, Asia, Tatiana. I just have a couple of funny, maybe not so funny, funny stories. The first time I went to the Santa Fe Legal Clinic, I rode with Felipe in the truck. And it's always fun riding with Felipe because, you know, he has stories, he keeps you entertained. And I'm just kind of going off what Asia was saying, you know, he's like, well, what kind of music do you like? And I'm like, whatever. And next thing I know, he's bumping Nicki Minaj. And he's singing and rapping, and instead of saying, you know, the B word, he calls it bit. You know, Felipe, bit means the B word. So that was interesting. I was like, all right, cool. He loved to shop. We knew that if there was any kind of gifts for anyone, he was really down to collect money and pick it out. He loved shopping. We did a peanut butter and jelly adopt-a-family thing around Christmas time, and I kind of was putting it together, and I went through all the kids, and I usually just randomly do it, but I saw this one, like, 7-year-old boy. You know, kids are like, you know, toys, Spider-Man, Fortnite, video games, and this little kid, he wanted a cowboy hat, a lasso. Like, he was asking for these, like, cowboy stuff, and I'm like, Felipe. So I definitely gave this kid to Felipe, and he went above and beyond. He got him this really gorgeous hat, this expensive lasso, the Wrangler shirt, the Wrangler jeans. Then he went and got him a dress suit, a dress outfit for church with some fancy Stacey Adams for a 7-year-old. And I'm like, he brought him in my office, and I was like, wow, these are awesome. And he's just full of pride pulling them out. And so that was always something to look forward to, was him, you know, doing nice things for people and giving him the opportunity to shop and show his flair, his style, you know. Staff meetings, oh my goodness. We heard about a lot of y'all, okay? Not all good. Yeah, if we're in the middle of staff meeting and we bring up something, I don't know, are you gonna say something, or do I talk about the wine? What was the name of it? Canyon. Oh, we had a client, I'm not supposed to, but the name was in there, and he was like, the wine. And we're in the middle of this discussion. The attorneys are trying to figure out the defenses for this client for court, and he's like on his phone, and next thing you know, he's showing us a YouTube commercial for Canyon wine. And I was gonna bring some, but I just got the Mickey's tall boy, and we would just look at each other, and he was just entertaining, you know? Both staffings are fun. I did VAP and housing, but I think housing was a little more fun because Tom would give him shit. This isn't 1923, Felipe, you know? This isn't legal aid society anymore. Well, and then, yeah, he's just a lot of fun, that guy. So we're gonna miss him. And I just wanna say thank you to Tatiana, Susan, everybody for getting this together. She had like 2 clinics this week, and she's just been getting everything together, so thank you for that.
All right, Angelica.
So I met Felipe back in like 1995, and Marisol and Anna, I think, are probably with me on being the legal aid members who knew Felipe the longest. I must have started at legal aid shortly after Felipe did, and he certainly taught me how the Legal Aid Society of Albuquerque worked. And we did. And you know, he really was, I think, in a lot of ways, a central force in making sure that we really provided the best services we could to our clients. He cared about every detail, and we sometimes butted heads about them. I think the one that Oh, I just, he was adamant that on our official documents that we had to spell Albuquerque, Alburquerque. Oh. And we had many, many discussions about this. And I had to be extremely strict in order to prevail on, we must use the actual official spelling of the word Albuquerque, and I appreciate the cultural significance of Albuquerque, but we are not going to do that. But I worked with Felipe for 10 years. He was really instrumental when we made the transition from the Legal Aid Society of Albuquerque to New Mexico Legal Aid, and I think he really carried out the mission, and I'm really going to miss him. I really enjoyed running into him around town, which I did regularly, or at the courthouse after I left legal aid, and he was such a mainstay, it's hard for me to think of legal aid without him. We were lucky to have him as long as we did.
Tom, he's already getting up, so.
Felipe did what he wanted to do. And he's bilingual, he speaks Spanish very well, and he's very smart, and he's a good writer. So I would have him write my Spanish closing letters. And I'd type in Pike, our case management system, just cut and paste this in, translate to Spanish, send it. And it would just be very general, because I didn't have time to restate all the advice I gave to the client. And as a lawyer, I didn't really want to put it in writing sometimes, because I thought, well, there's too many permutations. And then 2 weeks later, he would show me his draft, and it would be 3 pages long. And then he'd show me the English translation, and it was all perfectly well written, except it was a little more detail than I wanted. And then I would say, I don't want to tell him all that, and I'm not really sure all that's so, and it's pretty good, and then we'd argue about it, and then I'd end up just doing Google Translate. Because he was going to do what he's going to do. And then the other time, another thing I remember is one for housing staffing. One time we sent him out to buy the Impossible Burgers for all of us. He liked it very much. I thought it was okay, but then I had like a stomachache for 2 days. So. But he was fine with it. Yeah.
I'm sorry, Angelica. I think I knew him the longest at New Mexico Legal Aid. Actually, I met Felipe first when we were both working at the law school back a long, long time ago. We've since working at the law school, we both ended up working for legal aid. Him at the Legal Aid Society of Albuquerque and me at Indian Pueblo Legal Services. And if you remember Professor Bingaman, that's how far back we go. When we ran into each other, he would tease me about the miniskirts I wore then, and I used to tease him about the platform shoes he wore. So we were both. Anyway, he did come and work at the Native American Program Office for a brief period, and during that time, all the personalities of a legal secretary came out then. He would speak to a client on the phone for an hour, and sometimes maybe more than that, trying to get every detail he could about the client's problem. And sometimes I would have to talk to him about it because, wait a minute, you can't, there's other people calling, we got to get this thing, But anyway, Felipe did what he did. He, I used to call him a curmudgeon because at times he would be just so tenacious about his opinions, and sometimes his opinions raise eyebrows. But anyway, I do love his jewelry too. You know, I mean, he wore black, this big black stone on his finger, and I think he wore this red coral bracelet that I loved and really envied. I'm going to miss him, and I really miss him. He actually, you know, came to the Pueblo several times with my cousin Gertrude. Some of you remember him. I'm sorry, I'm going to cry. But I think he said, "This is really great. I feel at home," he said. And Gertrude wanted me to say that. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Jane, and I worked with Felipe in the volunteer attorney program beginning in 2013, one of the many iterations of the people who worked with him. I had written something about him and posted it already, so a few people in the room have read it already. But one of my roles when I was at New Mexico Legal Aid was we would travel around New Mexico hosting legal fairs in all the different judicial districts throughout the state. So as a result, we spent many, many hours together in the car where he talked and I did not talk. I just listened because I don't talk very much anyway. So he told me about his childhood, his time in Korea, just every single thing about his life and the casino. He introduced me to menudo, and he liked me, I think, because I liked menudo. He taught me how to eat it. He told me what to put in the menudo. And he would often tell people, you know, Jane, she's like a native New Mexican because she eats menudo like we do. And I was so happy when he would tell people that. There was one time at a legal fair, I ended up in the room alone with two male judges who shall remain unnamed. One of the judges asked me, "Am I as attractive as you thought I would be?" And I was horrified. But I didn't say anything because he was a judge. Afterward, I told Felipe, and Felipe was ready to get into a fight. Like, he was like rolling up his sleeves, he was going to go, and I was like, you can't do that. But in retrospect, maybe I should have let him because he would have won. And then one time we went somewhere that required an overnight stay, so we pulled up in front of the hotel, and he was like, I need to go get the hotel cart. Should I get the cart? And I said, why? Why do we need the cart? And so we got out, opened the trunk, and he had 3 suitcases for a one-night trip. And so I said, why did you pack so much? We're only here for one night. And he said, I wanted to be prepared for every situation, and I needed to bring my comb. And then my last story is, we went to Santa Fe for a legal fair, and I said, I can drive, do you want to ride with me? And he said, yes, but only if you don't talk. And I was like, if I don't talk? And so he said, only if you don't talk, and I can sit in the back seat and read my National Geographic magazine. I was like, okay, that's fine. I highly doubt you're not going to talk, but so he showed up. He had like National Geographics from 20 years ago that he needed to catch up on, and he sat in the back seat and he read them, and we went to Santa Fe. So he was truly the heart of legal aid. We are going to miss him terribly, and he can never, ever be replaced. Thanks.
Okay, I'm Dina. I worked with Felipe for all the time I was at Legal Aid. He and Asia trained me when I started out at Legal Aid. He had like a huge book that he had prepared about everything VAP related and NMLA related that came in very handy and was very, very useful. Now, he could have been a stand-up comic if he had wanted to. He was so funny, and yes, those staff things were sometimes a bit hard to take, or it was hard to kind of like steer it back to the thing. But Felipe teased me a lot about a bunch of stuff. One of them was about politics, and we actually agreed with a lot of things, but he would tease me a lot about Bibi Netanyahu, and then he would tease me about my driving. We would also drive to different legal fairs all over the place. He would tease me about that I'm driving like an old lady. So, so yeah. And one of the things that I really appreciate about Felipe was his concern for our clients. That was very, very deep. And in particular, one of the things that really went to his heart and that he poured his heart and soul out was working with clients who are suffering from cancer. Our relationship with the Cancer Services of New Mexico has really, because of him, it has grown and deepened, and it became one of our a decision as the VAP to make this one of our things that we do, even though it's outside of priorities, outside of whatever. But that really has become something very important, and it was because of Felipe. And whenever we had a case, he would not wait. Those were not cases that we waited on, and he always worked them to the fullest. The other thing I really want to share is that he was very much a traditionalist, interested in tradition. He would not only celebrate his birthday, but also he would go to San Felipe Fiesta Days, because that's his name. He would want us to, as the VAP, to go to the state fair every year. That was very important, and we made a point of doing that. And then for Christmas or the holidays, when we had holiday parties, dinners, he would always bring this candy. And I'm blocking the name right now, but I bought some, and there are some there in Felipe's memory. He would bring and give everybody from the team those cans with that candy in it. So I can never have those hard candy without thinking of Felipe. He was not an easy person, but we will miss him in all his different aspects and all that he brought to the program and to NMLA.
Hi, my name's Shannon Bacon, and my work with Felipe was through the VAP, and I'm going to talk about, at the end, Felipe as protector. So Felipe, I had a long relationship with him over the different iterations of the VAP. It's like a VAP reunion here today, all of the different people who worked for the program, and my relationship to it was through the courts. And so Felipe was the constant in the VAP. He was the person who was there from the beginning until the end. He was there early, he stayed late. He would stay for that very last client who didn't. There was one lawyer left, it was probably Susan Page, and would stick it out to make sure that everybody who showed up had an opportunity to talk to somebody. And everything everyone's talked about today rings so true. Edna talking about being worried that Felipe didn't like her. Well, he didn't like me much at the beginning either. I think he thought, who is this woman who doesn't work for legal aid? But over the course of time, that evolved and changed. And the Felipe as protector really came about for me in the course of all of the legal fairs that we had. And it took it upon himself to always find that one or two people that had shown up for services who were mad at me. And he took great delight in finding the client who had appeared in front of me representing themselves and was really mad at Judge Bacon. And he'd come over and he'd tell me, you see that, they're really mad at you, but I'm going to make sure that you stay over here and that lady stays on the other side of the room. So that's Felipe as protector for me. And so I will greatly miss Felipe being my protector at legal fairs. It's very clear today how much he'll be missed at legal aid, but the courts are going to miss Felipe too. He was a regular fixture in the district courts, and all of the judges who worked with the volunteer attorney program grew to love Felipe and really understand how important he was to the work that everybody was doing. So the judiciary will miss him a lot as well. Thanks.
Hi, I'm Terrell. Is this an AA meeting? Felipe and I were friends. Felipe was my friend. And I met him through New Mexico Legal Aid in the union. I have thought about what I wanted to say. There's just so much. But what I want to, I guess, share that I'm not hearing anyone else share is his humanity and like who he was under that crust. He was a very kind and thoughtful, and it was hard for him to receive, I think, because he'd been hurt. And there were just times that I was able to be with him when some of that would show. I don't know any of those private reasons. I just kind of sensed it. The other thing I'm going to say about Felipe is that he gave better than he got. He had a good life, and he lived it fully. I wondered sometimes if he ever slept. So I work in the Native American program, which is the Santa Ana office, and I don't remember who was talking, but it made me remember a few things. When Felipe came over to help, we were without a secretary and an intake person, and like we had some really neat things that we would do in the holidays. We would always have like a dinner, and we'd do like white elephant gifts or just, you know, something. But the thing that Felipe brought was us all eating lunch together. We would sit at the table and visit. Like, we wouldn't be attorneys, we wouldn't be a legal secretary, we would just be normal human beings. And we needed that. The last time that Felipe and I ever went to a feast day, it was the Santa Ana Pueblo feast in July. And there was a really bad storm. Gosh, this must have been 5 or 6 years ago. It stormed so bad that like Bernalillo totally flooded out. And they were dancing, and the leaders had them go in. And so we knew that it was over, and so we were trying to get to my truck, and we got there, but we were like, pelted with hail. And then, it was really hard to see, but I had a 4x4 truck, so we were able to make it back to the office parking lot, and he was in a different vehicle that was really low, and he said, I'm not gonna be able to make it home, because it's like pouring and thundering and lightning, and it's flooding, and so we went to the casino. Yeah, well, electricity was on, like everything was going. They had power. Another casino moment. I didn't go all the time. I've got 2 more stories on that. Las Vegas. The union always goes every 18 months to the national training. And the first year I ever went, I went with Felipe. Janet was there too. it's a three-day, 3.5-day event. The final day, we're waiting. It's Sunday. We're waiting because we know, our plane leaves at a certain time, and we don't have anything to do, so we're at the casino, and he loved to play, I think it was craps. I didn't know how to play that. I like to play the machines or Keno. So I was over, and I won. And I come back, he has nothing. He doesn't even, he says, I don't even have gas in my car when I get home. So I gave him some money, and he won. And he had money to put a full tank of gas in his car, and off he went again. And then the last memory I'd like to share is really, for some reason, we just decided to meet at Sandia Casino for the buffet. We were working on something with the union, and we ended up sitting there for hours eating plates of mashed potatoes and gravy and talking. And that, those are the kinds of things that I remember about him. I remember how brave he was when he had all his teeth fixed. Some of the things that he planned to do, like I was so afraid for him. He went down to Mexico and had that done, and I was just like, are you sure, are you sure? And he was like, yes, this is what I'm going to do. Anyway, I will miss you, Felipe. I've been missing you. I know you're at peace. I know you're not in pain. You're not suffering in this world anymore. And I hope to see you again.
Hi, I'm Erin, and nobody's going to be surprised that I'm another former VAP person. It does seem to be the theme. So I was laughing this morning when I was getting ready because I had to choose kind of carefully what I was going to pick, because in my mind I just hear Felipe saying, don't look tacky, don't look tacky. And we worked together for a couple of years, and evidently he thought I was tacky on more than one occasion. I remember it's such a silly thing, but I had found this pair of pants at Old Navy, and they were 49 cents, and they were really awful pants, but they were 49 cents, and so I was like, fine, I'm beating the system, I'm buying these pants. And I show up, and he was like, yeah, you have to go home and change, like, this is so awful. And they were that awful is the thing, that he was right. But, every day with Felipe was sort of like that. You never know what you were gonna get, what sort of just really honesty, but a kindness in that honesty, I think. Lots of times, he had such, we sort of joke he has this grumpy exterior, and he did. I've never sworn myself so much as when I was working with him. It just sort of rubbed off. But he also just had this, kindness to him and a joy in his heart. And I think one of the things I think about, and I've heard echoed in other people's comments, is just how he could find such pleasure in these small daily life things that we had. He could recount a meal in all of its glory, if it was a burrito or if it was, a three-course meal that he'd had someplace else. Asia, you talked about those things, and that echoes as well, but just that ability to find these small pleasures, and I just admired that about him so much, and really I'll try and remember him in that way by doing that in my life. But when I first started working in the VAP, it was only me, and I really was lost a lot and didn't, it was this new thing, and Felipe starts working with me part-time, and then he eventually starts working with me full-time, and it was just such a joy to work with him. He really had a sense of justice, and he had a sense of what's right and wrong, and how the VAP should work, and how legal aid should work, and the kind of services we should be doing. And one of the things that he was so insistent on, and I think we all agreed, but he would always keep it there, that the people who are getting pro bono help, they shouldn't be made to feel like they were getting pro bono help. They should be made to feel that they were getting the same exact help as everybody else. Yeah, so anyways, so he was really instrumental in starting and helping me start the VAP, and then in all of its iterations. you know, and he would let me know if I wasn't living up to his expectations, if we weren't doing it right, you know, but he was, you know, right a lot. So anyways, so that's what I wanted to say, is that I as well will miss him. You know, I saw him mid-December. I didn't get a chance because I work further away now. I don't get a chance to see him as much, but I saw him mid-December, and that's the other thing about Felipe, is you could go a while without seeing him, and it would still be like he would just welcome you as if he had just seen you, and jumping back in into saying, these are the amazing things that we're doing, and what are you doing? Like, he would call me to see, like, are you still doing good things? And so anyways, I'm gonna miss him.
My name is Rose Seipler. My family and I known Felipe for over 31 years. He and I first met when he and I were working for a local immigration attorney right after his open heart surgery. He was a permanent part of our family every single weekend. My mother thought that that was the son that she always wanted to have. He wanted to have her braid his hair, and I've heard a lot of people talk about the casino, but a lot of people don't know that Felipe had a very humane side of him that I will terribly miss him as a friend. A lot of you work for legal aid. When I went to work for district court, he tried to get me to work for legal aid. And unfortunately at that time, I loved what I was doing at district court. He would wake me up at 2 o'clock in the morning saying, I don't have a ride, can you take me to Socorro? I have to be at work. I said, Felipe, I gotta be at work too. So we always made arrangements because he always came first. My mother had a special place, a special cup plate for him, which I still have for him. Every year, and forgive me for this, but he would call me 3 months before his birthday, which is the 30th of March, and would say, hey, you old bag, where are you taking me this time? And forgive me, and I would say, hey, you old fart, you want to go and reserve the room again at the casino for you? And oddly enough, it was my husband who taught him how to shoot craps. But he was one of those individuals that, as a co-worker, I had my issues in editing my letters when we worked for the immigration attorney, because my Spanish was quite different than his. And like Tom said, one paragraph became 3 pages. But Felipe also had an intimate relationship with my mother. When she passed, he was there. He was the first one to be there. When my husband died of cancer, he was there. When I told my family, my 2 daughters, they were devastated. One cannot be here because she lives in Seattle. But I just wanted to let you know, I inherited from Felipe a lot of knowledge, and I'll forever, ever cherish his friendship. I also inherited a lot of his jewelry, which I love, and I never really appreciated it. But when I met Felipe, I don't recall ever winning an argument. You know, One story I will have to tell you, he named his cars. His little Volkswagen, a blue little Volkswagen, was named Guadalupe, and it had no floor in the passenger. So every time I had to go in there, I had to take a board so that I could put my feet, otherwise I would throw it, you know. So finally my husband said, Felipe, let's go and get you a truck and leave Guadalupe here. So we got him a truck. And when he run that one down, he got another truck. But nonetheless, I cherish every minute. And when I found out he had passed, because his last message was, hey, you old bag, where are you taking me for lunch for my birthday? So I appreciate everybody's stories, and I'll forever miss them. Thank you.
So thank you all for your stories. I think we are going to continue with the storytelling. We have refreshments. Is there another? Okay, there's one more. I think Susan. Okay. Tatiana's going to say.
So to close up the ceremony, Renee Valdez and Aaron Olson will now lead you in a litany of remembrance, asking you to remember Felipe and others we've lost. After they read each line, you are invited to respond, we remember them. And right afterwards, there are refreshments across the hall, and we invite you all to share refreshments and remembrances.
So I will hold up my hand, and we will, after Aaron reads, and we'll all together say, we remember them.
In the rising of the sun and in its going down.
We remember them.
In the blowing of the wind and in the chill of winter.
We remember them.
In the opening of buds and in the rebirth of spring.
We remember them.
In the blueness of the sky and in the warmth of summer.
We remember them.
In the rustling of leaves and in the beauty of autumn.
We remember them.
In the beginning of the year and when it ends.
We remember them.
When we are weary and in need of strength.
We remember them.
Go ahead.
When we are lost and sick at heart, we remember them. When we have joys we yearn to share, we remember them.
So long as we live, they too shall live, for they are now a part of us.
We remember them. And just briefly, I just wanted to share about Felipe real quick. So Felipe did like me. And we worked together at all the legal clinics, and he was my go-to guy. And so if anything I needed, I knew Felipe had it. And we met for lunch a couple of times at Al's Big Dipper at the library, and when Susan Page was going to have a procedure, he asked if I would help him with his technology. So the two of us were on his outdated smartphone, and we're trying to figure out this app, and we still couldn't figure it out. But I have a casino story too. So my husband and I are like rookies at the casino, but we don't like to spend that much. So there's these machines that only pay 15 cents max bet. And I'd always see Felipe, and so my husband and Marino would always be sitting next to my husband, Marino and Felipe would always be sitting next to each other doing the 15-cent max bet. You know, I'm sure at the end of the day, this is what we have left to try to gamble here. But I'll always remember Felipe, and one time he did get after me too about referrals. I was making a referral to the VAP, and he'd be sure to let me know that I wasn't doing it right and giving me clear instructions about making sure I get those referrals right. But I'll definitely miss Felipe. He's a good guy. Thank you.